Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Office Blow Daz.
I'm Gaynor.
Here we are, two of us today.
Yeah.
Patreon's your thing. Check out the link in the description below. Loads of stuff on there. Starting just $3 a month to support the channel. Full watch-alongs, things like Modern Family, Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
F is for Family, Seinfeld.
Welcome to Wrexham. There's loads of stuff on there. Anyway, check it. Some quizzes on there as well.
Yeah.
And everyone likes a quiz. What if Canada joined America?
I don't think America would be very happy.
I don't think Canadians would be happy, if you're being honest. It's no one wants their country to join somewhere else, really, do they?
No.
You know, it's like Scotland trying to get independence from Great Britain at the moment in the UK.
When we did a video about states joining, there was a lot of backlash.
Yeah, a lot of people don't like that, and especially, you know, they've got a lot of history in Canada.
Yeah.
And same with the USA. I don't know, it's why not Mexico as well? If that's, you might as well throw it all in a pot, hadn't you? But let's see what this is about. What if Canada joined America?
Following the 2024 U.S. presidential elections, in which Donald Trump overwhelmingly defeated Kamala Harris, Trump promised massive tariffs. Both Canada and Mexico would receive 25% tariffs if they failed to shut off the flow of drugs and illegal immigrants into the U.S. But these tariffs are contentious among economists, as the three economies are deeply intertwined. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau visited Trump to discuss the tariffs in December 2024, and told Trump the tariffs would kill the Canadian economy completely. Trump jokingly responded that if Canada couldn't survive without, quote, ripping America off, as Canada had a $100 billion trade deficit, they should become the 51st state. Both sides later said the meeting was productive, though many Canadians felt offended by Trump's joke. The president-elect played up the joke, later posting a picture of himself with the Canadian flag.
Not gonna lie, he's kind of funny with his social media, sort of like, you know, the way he trolls people.
It's a bit like Boris Johnson.
Yeah, a little bit. He's one of them guys that just knows how to
wind you up.
Yeah, he knows how to wind people up a little bit and get under skin. But I'd just like to know as well, I know we have quite a few Canadians watching us as well, what the take is on Justin Trudeau. Because the way we see it over here, he's not doing a great job.
No.
But he's could just be portrayed by the way the British media want to see it. But it comes across as not very popular, let's say.
And some prominent figures on the American right, such as Jesse Waters, the Fox News primetime host, supported the idea of integrating Canada into the US. So join me, you over 43,000 patriots and the 90% who haven't subscribed yet, as history is forever changed when Trump seriously attempts to annex Canada. Talks with Trudeau go disastrously as he threatens to institute 50% tariffs, destroying the Canadian economy, setting the stage for massive trade war. The annexation of Canada begins to be floated out to the MAGA base through the establishment right via Fox, Newsmax, while the more independent right, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Alex Jones, opposes the move as a waste of money and fears it would liberalize America. While the base is relatively split, the more Trump pushed the idea as a culmination of manifest destiny, it quickly grew in popularity. Across the aisle, Democrats eagerly supported the measure, sensing a chance to make up for the disastrous 2024 cycle, labeling it the Great Integration. Trump's first action after his inauguration was 50% tariffs on Canada, as Trudeau failed to solve the border issues in the only few months Trump gave him. American energy prices rose, though it was slightly offset as Trump increased domestic gas and oil production from Alaska and Texas, while the Canadian economy tanked, cratering Trudeau in the polls with the upcoming 2025 Canadian federal elections. He's already trailing Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre by 20 points, so it rises to 30 points here. Trump pushes Trudeau for a national referendum over Canada's future, and Trudeau, with nothing to lose, agrees to hold the vote. As of 2024, only 34% of Canadians are very proud to be Canadians, while a combined 14% have either no connection to Canada, wishing it to be divided into separate nations, or wish to outright join America. So, as the Canadian economy struggled, while America slightly improved under Trump, combined American left and right propaganda on the benefits of joining America flood Canada, pushing the needle as America was fully on board with the Union. In the summer of 2025, Canada held the Democratic plebiscite and narrowly voted to join the US, ending their 157 years of independence. The tariffs played a big role, while joining the American markets offered stability. The stronger government appealed to the poorer provinces as DC could provide more help with infrastructure, while deregulation intrigued many conservatives and businesses. Additionally, by joining the US, they gained representation in Washington, D.C., giving Canada a sizable say in the global hegemon. Would any of this happen? Absolutely not. There's just no way Canada votes to join the US, or that America, especially when controlled by the Republican Party, would accept it. But if you have a more realistic way for this to happen, comment below, I'd love to hear. Now let's explore the ramifications. Trump and Trudeau jointly announced that Canada will immediately begin integrating with the Union, reassuring NATO and the UN that this is a good day for democracy and global order. Reactions are relatively mixed amongst the West. Australia and New Zealand congratulated the merger, while Britain is unhappy losing part of the Commonwealth in such a fashion.
He's unhappy about everything, this clown,
Oh,
anyway.
can't stand him.
Same. I never watched something where someone winds me up so much as he winds me
Yeah,
up.
yeah. Just looking at him, it's just like
Yeah, it's just one lie after another, isn't it? He tells something, and the next day he does talk. I know all politicians, or most politicians.
yeah.
do
But
that.
I think he's worse than all of them.
Yeah, but if I don't know, he's one of them where he's gonna get, when Trump does come to power in January, it's gonna be.
He's gonna get a kick up the arse.
He is gonna get a kick up the arse big time, and I can't wait for that to happen.
As it only accentuated their dramatic fall in the past 75 years, France only really cared about the rights of the Quebecois. China was indifferent, while Russia was angry, as American weapons became much closer as the Arctic was the only barrier, increasing tensions. Opponents of the Union quickly compared it to the Anschluss and doubted the legitimacy of the vote, even though this was 100% democratic. This could open Pandora's box, showing that nations could peacefully unite and might encourage others to do the same: Albania and Kosovo, Serbia and Montenegro, Ireland and Northern Ireland. Though the highest chance of immediate integration was between Russia and their puppet in Belarus, and Putin would likely stage a referendum and annex it into Russia, putting them directly on Poland's border. As Trump previously mediated an end to the Ukraine war for favorable terms with Russia, the Russian threat loomed very large over Europe. For the rest of the video, we'll assume Russia does not start a major conflict in Europe, as if that's the case, any predictions are impossible. Pan-Arabic sentiment could rise across the Islamic world, though it's unlikely to result in any political changes. Despite voting to join America, the former provinces were not granted statehood, first becoming American territories while they drafted state constitutions and applied for statehood. They could retain their unicameral legislatures, as Nebraska is the only state with one legislature, but the parliamentary system would be totally replaced by a Republican one, separating the governor from the legislature. Each province has good infrastructure, and all except Prince Edward Island have adequate populations. While technically there is no population requirement for statehood, even though 500,000 is often cited, and the Northwest Ordinance of 1787 only requires 60,000 people, it would pose a problem for Prince Edward Island. Newfoundland and Labrador, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta were all admitted as states. To keep a relatively even electoral split, Alberta expands here to the Cascades to better balance votes, adding roughly 1.6 million people to the Conservative state. The remains of British Columbia form the state of Vancouver. This still left a massive question over Prince Edward Island, as Republicans were unwilling to give the Democrats a congressman and 2 senators for only 154,000 people. Despite this, they already had...
Wonder why not many people live on Prince Edward Island.
I was just thinking the same.
Yeah, I wonder why it's so lightly populated. If anyone knows that, why? There's a reason behind it. Let us know.
Maybe there's just not a lot of jobs there.
Representation in Canada, so forcing them to join New Brunswick or Nova Scotia would be very unpopular on the island. After much debate, America did what it does best and came to a compromise. Known as the Jefferson Compromise, the federal government endorsed the creation of the new state of Jefferson in eastern Washington and Oregon up to the Cascades, with roughly 2.2 million people. There's no real basis for how this could happen, but the best example is when Kentucky left Virginia in 1792. Just as with eastern Washington and Oregon, Kentucky was separated by mountains, and it was costly and impractical for the core of the state to administer the sparsely populated outskirts. The only reason the liberal state legislatures could accept losing their eastern lands would be the federal government assuming the state debts, $12.5 billion for Oregon and $22.4 billion for Washington. With their debts erased and likely being pressured by senior Democrats such as Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, or Hakeem Jeffries to accept the compromise, as Canada more than made up for the losses, Jefferson became the state. Quebecois independence spiked during the Canadian plebiscite, as they had become an even smaller minority in the English-speaking America. But the federal government couldn't isolate Labrador. With the effective extinction of the Cajun and Creole tongues as a warning, Quebec preferred to remain a federal territory, similar to Puerto Rico, ruling themselves as they kept their own francophone parties. This enabled Quebec to represent themselves at international events like the Olympics and World Cup, while remaining part of the American markets. The Quebec Territorial Constitution was drawn up, as for most Quebecois, they preferred the increased autonomy and vagueness that a territory provided, as it left the door open for independence in the future should an opportunity present itself. Some Canadian governmental quirks might fold into the states, but it wouldn't take long before the Canadian territories would become accepted as US states. It only took
I was just wondering that, the way he's putting this together. He's putting it together quite well, like hypothetically, and what could happen. But the way I see it is, how long would it take Canadians to be accepted as part of the USA, or would they always... I guess it'd have to go through generational sort of side of it, wouldn't it? Yeah, I'm a Canadian American, or I don't know, it's how they'd have to, whether they sort of like go more regionalised as well.
Yeah.
Texas a few months to be admitted back in 1845, so a similar timeline would be in effect, being admitted in the late fall, early winter of 2025. The 3 Canadian territories of the Yukon, the Northwest Territories, and Nunavut remained American territories, as their combined populations were far too small. This left America with 60 states, adding 3.8 million square miles, 9.9 million square kilometers, doubling America to 7.6 million square miles, 19.8 million square kilometers, 12.2% of the world's landmass. Russia lost its spot as the largest nation on Earth, while America was still only the 4th largest state in history, trailing the British, Mongol, and Russian empires. Despite joining the Union, many issues persisted. Chief amongst them was Canadian nationalism. Although they narrowly voted to join, many Canadians felt homeless in America, especially the older generations. Similar to the South, where the stars and bars can often be seen flying, the maple leaf was flown through many parts of Canada. Loyalty was towards their new states rather than the distant federal government in DC. Younger Canadians had an easier time integrating, embracing the American identity, especially the politically active ones. The legal system in the Canuck states was a mess for all involved with it, judges, lawyers, clerks, etc. They all needed to learn the new American legal system. Each new state needed to set up its own licensing system for people to learn the Constitution, landmark cases, and the state and federal laws, which were much more complicated than the Canadian system. American lawyers and judges were appointed to establish the American system, ensuring the courts properly functioned, and aided the local officials to adapt. Until the Canadians passed the bar, Americans oversaw the administrative work, litigation, and training. Imported lawyers served as mentors, instructors, and advisors to Canadian lawyers transitioning to the US laws. This led to local resentment among the legal community, as they viewed it as a foreign takeover of their profession, but helped integrate the new states as tens of thousands of Americans moved north, as it offered new opportunities and had much less competition. Healthcare was a massive headache, as Canada's socialized system was incompatible with the mixed private American format. The strongest basis is from German reunification, as East Germany had state-socialized healthcare, while West Germany was extremely privatized. Just as in Germany, the government facilities were bought by capitalist companies, as the federal government sold many facilities, while Yankee companies lobbied politicians to take over different state healthcares, purchasing existing hospitals, clinics, and other medical facilities. This mirrors the privatization trend seen across Europe after the fall of communism, where Western companies bought state healthcare assets and modernized them. American firms saw Canada as an excellent opportunity as their healthcare became highly commercialized, with companies providing insurance, equipment, and healthcare services. Medicaid and Medicare were also offered across the new states. Despite the privatization, it would certainly be a mess, and take at least 10 years until the federal government could sell most assets to either the states or healthcare firms, especially in rural areas that rely heavily upon the state-run Canadian system. New treaties were drafted with the Canadian Native Indians, which took time as they were no longer referred to as the First Peoples. The term might continue amongst some Canadians, but it was phased out of public life relatively quickly, as the Northern Reserves folded into the American reservation system. Funding to many was drastically cut, forcing more Native Americans to leave reservations in search of better financial opportunities. Canada's $1.2 trillion national debt, less than California's, was absorbed as part of the merger, but it wouldn't impact American politics much, as both parties foolishly have no qualms constantly driving America further into debt. The costs of integration here were immense, rising to trillions of dollars when accounting for all of it. America gained vast supplies of power through oil, gas, and hydroelectric power. America is currently the world's largest crude oil producer, with over 13.3 million barrels per day, far more than second-place Russia, who produced 10.2 million barrels per day. Canada currently has 170 billion barrels of proven oil reserves compared to America's 74 billion. So, without the Canadian regulations, America's oil production, after heavy investment by the government through pipelines and private companies to drill, could produce up to 45.6 million barrels per day, tripling oil production, 5 times that of Saudi Arabia. Factoring in natural gas, the US currently has the 4th largest reserves, but outproduces Russia with 34.5 trillion cubic feet per year, compared to Russia's 24.8 trillion cubic feet. Adding in Canada's reserves, accounting for increased deregulation, increases America's production to 39.2 trillion cubic feet per year. So, just from crude oil and natural gas, these industries alone account for 7.6% of the American GDP, yet roughly $3.6 trillion a year, are more than tripling to $11.88 trillion a year, while creating hundreds of thousands of jobs, easily offsetting the initial costs and time of integration, potentially allowing America to start paying off its debt.
That'd be wild, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
For the natural gas and oil.
Yeah.
The reserves that they've got between them, that if they combine, they get, what was it, 4 times more than Saudi Arabia, 4 times more than the output of the Saudis. That'd be incredible, that.
Though it must be remembered, this would take a long time. You can find all this data on the U.S. Energy Information Administration and do the calculations yourself if you think I'm exaggerating how massive this could be for the U.S. economy. Canada also has an abundance of precious metals, gold, silver, etc., and rare earth minerals that could aid America. The timber industry is a large part of their economy, so exports would certainly increase. Agricultural production would also rise with deregulation, so food prices would come down across the states as more grains, meats, and fish enter the market. In the short term, the extreme housing prices in Canada benefit the most for the integration, as many economists blame overregulation for the price. So the more laissez-faire American regulations would drive costs down, similar to what's currently happening under Milei in Argentina. It's more likely that Canada adapts to the American political climate than vice versa, as there is 335 million Americans compared to the 41 million Canadians, similar in size to California. The numbers just aren't there to shift the Overton window drastically to the left. Instead, they would follow the current path as both parties appear to be moving further away from the center. The US Congress has been fixed at 435 seats since 1929, but the expansion and dramatic changes could lead to the expansion of 40 additional seats, upping the number of congressmen to 475. As Quebec chose to remain a territory, the number of Canadians who needed federal representation was 32.6 million, similar to the Texas population of 30.9 million. Hence, 40 seats are added, as Texas has 38. This keeps a similar ratio in the states, and just adds more for Canada, as Washington typically prefers expansion versus reduction. After doing nearly 2 hours of calculations based upon recent state and province populations, which you can find in a pinned comment, this would be the new congressional representation. Currently, it's roughly 776,000 people per seat, and the inclusion here slightly increases it to 784,000, but representation is essentially the same. As the Senate now has 120 seats, the Electoral College looks like this, meaning the race to 270 electoral votes is now the race to 298. The new system favors the Democrats, as the current 223 to 233 lead that the Republicans have in the presidential election through the various states, which likely would have risen to 238 to 218 because of internal migration, sees the Democrats likely have a lock of 259 votes compared to the Republicans' 257 electoral votes. Assuming Alberta and Saskatchewan are Republican states, Manitoba is the only real Canadian swing state, while the American ones remain the same. This dramatically shifts the Senate to the Democrats' favor, while slightly aiding them in Congress, though I don't have the time to project each congressional seat for the Canadian states. Canadian Liberal and Conservative parties would slowly merge into the Republican and Democrats, as both are close enough to attract the majority of the former Canadian Party members, and they would slowly accept the standard American political stances. The local Canadian parties that dominate provincial elections likely remain in place, but slowly make way for mainstream parties, as America doesn't typically have local parties. Despite the initial hurdles that integration with Canada could pose, if America was relatively successful under Trump, which is by no means certain for obvious reasons, it's probable J.D. Vance continues his drastic cuts and deregulatory protectionist policies, which would certainly increase the value of Canadian states once oil and gas production are ramped up. It's impossible to predict when it would pay itself off, but with enough investment, and if oil and gas remained at a similar value, by the mid-2040s the states would likely turn a profit, and America's national debt could come down if DC was actually fiscally responsible. Assuming no major wars break out with Russia over Europe or China over Taiwan, the gap between those two and America grows further apart, as the US is stronger economically and militarily. Trump would undoubtedly be the most influential president since FDR, and arguably since Abraham Lincoln, but he would have an extremely contentious reputation. If the gamble ultimately paid off, a future Republican might add Trump to Mount Rushmore. In time, the Canadian spirit would fade as future generations were raised into and brought up as Americans. It's ultimately impossible to know if the Overton window moves dramatically, as the success or failure of Canada could be fatal for either party. But if it spelled success, Manifest Destiny had finally been completed, as God truly had blessed America.
Interesting.
Good video that. He's put it together well. So like hypothetically, what could happen if it was together?
It could be one massive powerhouse.
It'd be a superpowers, but I mean, obviously the price of oil would come down anyway.
Yeah.
It wouldn't remain the same with that more production coming out. You know, between the two of them pumping out, especially if production when oil production's level increased.
Yeah.
But it's interesting as well. But I mean, it wouldn't happen anyway.
No.
But it's like I say, it's an interesting story to see what could happen.
What it would be like.
It's certainly tread on the toes of Russia, obviously.
Yeah.
But I mean, they've got Alaska anyway, which is very close. But obviously, just with the Arctic Circle just above them, it's sort of like gets it even closer again for everything for what would be a mega power, more than a superpower. But it'd be certainly it'll put America in control of the whole. I mean, they pretty much control the world as it is. but to control the rest of the world on a finer footing with Canada in the mix as well.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to get a view of what Canadians and Americans think of that, because it's no one wants their country to go into a merger with another country.
No.
They don't want to, and forget it's the only one I can foresee, and which he mentioned as well, would be Belarus going into Russia.
Yeah.
Because I know they're very close, Belarus and Putin's crew over there, aren't they?
Yeah.
But there you go, eh? Yeah, let us know what you think.
And we thought we had it with Scotland.
Scotland, they had their vote to leave, and they said they wanted to stay part of Britain. And now they're trying to. Some politicians are trying to push it through again as well. But I don't think that'll ever happen either as well. And I'll be surprised if it did.
Yeah.
There you go. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll catch you on the next one.
Bye.
Cheers.